Tonight on the Daily Debrief, R. Kelly's crisis manager is out of a job. Plus, did this European webcam woman drive a defendant to murder his whole family?
The defendant became addicted to her, consumed with her, possessed by her, and he was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of the family's money on her.
And
if I would have saw anything on those kids, I would have turned Jen and Joseph both in myself.
the mother of an accused child killer takes to stand for the defense. Was it accidental death or murder? The Daily Debrief recaps the day in court. It's Tuesday, July 23rd.
Welcome to the Debrief, everybody. Aaron Keller, along with Linda Kenny Budden. Our other guests will be with us on the line in just a moment. Opening statements in the trial of a Florida man accused of killing his family after he stole their money and sent it to a webcam girlfriend in Bulgaria. 29-year-old Grant Amato is accused of taking $200,000 from his mother, Margaret, his father, Chad, and his brother, Cody. Prosecutors say the father gave the defendant a list of rules such as get a job, stop spending every night online, and go get therapy. Rather than comply, the defendant is accused of murdering them all and then trying to take money from their life insurance policies. This is the woman the state of Florida says was the defendant's obsession. Were his ties to this Romanian webcam woman so strong that he pulled the trigger and killed his mother, his father, and his brother? Let's start with the state's opening statements.
What was his motive? Why did he kill his family? The answer to that question lies and will be found across the ocean in Bulgaria and a woman named Sylvie, if that's her real name. Grant Amato was and is obsessed with this woman. Sylvie is an internet cam model. The defendant, Grant Amato, became addicted to her, consumed with her, possessed by her, to the point that he was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of the family's money on her. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to, quote, be with her on our internet website. And he presented to her a persona that was not who he really was. A professional gamer, owned his own home, drove a BMW. That's what the persona was that he presented himself to her. And when his parents found out about his, quote, relationship with Sylvie and the tremendous amounts of money that he was spending on her, they contacted her and they let her know the lies that he was telling her and who he really was. And that effectively ended his relationship with Sylvie. And to Grant Amato, that was the end of the world. There was nothing to live for. And he was furious with his family for ending his world.
The state says all three victims were shot execution style at home and that there were no signs of forced entry. What's more, the state says the defendant planted evidence to make it look like his brother was at fault.
He placed a handgun near Cody's body and 4 shell casings in the vicinity of each body to correspond to the number of wounds. He also placed a holster with a gun on it on Chad's right hip underneath Chad's belt to make it appear that there was some kind of confrontation between Cody and Chad that required Chad to arm himself. It was the defendant who planted these items of evidence.
The state says the defendant even pushed the theory that his brother committed the crime during a police interview. The story fell apart, though, they say, when police caught the defendant with gloves with gunshot residue, even though he claimed he got rid of his guns long before the shootings. And the state says it's the defendant's DNA, not the brother's, inside those gloves. The defense says Amato flat out didn't do it, that the state's timeline doesn't match up, that the defendant did not have access to weapons, the defendant did not have weapons training, and the defense refuted the state's theory about gunshot residue on the defendant's gloves.
Gunshot residue testing was performed on the gloves that were found in the hotel room of Mr. Amato. Now, what's important about this testing, the evidence will show a low particle count. It's more likely to obtain a low particle count from transfer than from holding an actual firearm. Basically, it means sitting on a surface or coming from a surface that had gunshot residue on it. And the low particle count, the evidence will show that that is how this occurred, based on transfer gunshot residue and not the holding of an actual firearm that was fired.
All right, those are both sides of the case. We have an excellent panel tonight to break it down. Criminal defense attorneys Linda Kenny Bodden and Joseph Tully are here tonight. But Judge Ashley Wilcott, let's start with you. So if we're to believe the defense, someone else did this and left behind basically zero evidence, right?
Well, that's what they're trying to argue. And so, Aaron, it might sound a little suspicious, but on the other hand, if it was a professional hit, which is, I think the defense may go there because of the drug paraphernalia in the home, one could argue they would know how to do that without leaving any evidence behind.
Interesting theory. Okay, maybe a little nugget of truth behind it with that evidence you talked about, Ashley. Joseph, there were weapons in the home. Is the lock on the cabinet enough for the defense to basically sit here and conclude the defendant had no access to them?
I don't think so. And I'm not sure that this is going to hold up well for the defense throughout the course of the trial. I mean, they're pointing to marijuana as the boogeyman here, but would it change the analysis if the parents had a wine cellar? No, it doesn't. People have guns, people have marijuana. It doesn't mean that anything nefarious is going on. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out during the course of this trial.
Linda Kenny Bodden, there is a lack of DNA here, generally speaking, but is it accurate to say, to conclude with that, though, you know, what they do have seems to point to the defendant, forget the lack of DNA.
Right. You can have a crime that's committed without DNA. I mean, because there's nobody's DNA apparently on the people that are dead, right? And also the gunshot residue, they're probably correct. That could be transfer. And they're correct. They're probably other forensic items. The problem you have is that the crime scene is more. It's the cell phone, it's the computer, it's where he was, it's when the brother came home, and it's how the families were killed, which is clearly a motive that he wanted somebody, or somebody wanted somebody really dead.
So Linda Kenny Bodden, usually taking the side of the defense here. Am I sniffing in the wind that you're supporting the prosecution theory at this point?
Well, I support the defense theory in terms of what the forensics may not show for the state. But I think this motive and the crime scenes and the time periods may support the prosecution even more.
It's certainly a different motive. Judge Ashley Wilcott, your thoughts on this? Does this look like a strong case for the state or not, in your opinion?
I think it does. And if you've seen any of the video of him giving his statement when his other brother comes into the room, that other brother is so visibly distraught, and this defendant is so stoic that, again, I think that demeanor weighs into the state's argument he had a motive, he did it.
You know, we could read a lot of things into demeanor. You know, is he on any medications? Are we going to get any evidence about that? Joseph Tully.
Again, demeanor in court means something to a jury, but hopefully the defense can explain it as, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know how somebody is going to react in a courtroom. I'm advising my client to, not show emotion or to be stoic. Please keep your mind on the facts of the case rather than focusing on the demeanor in court. There could be a lot of reasons behind a demeanor in court.
Certainly, and we see that here with the many trials that we cover. We'll be back to the panel on our next case. Singer R. Kelly's crisis manager has resigned one day after saying he would not trust his own daughter around an accused pedophile such as R. Kelly. The manager made the comments yesterday to CBS News. Today, he said he was resigning for personal reasons unrelated to R. Kelly, and he said he was not forced to step down. R. Kelly, of course, is accused of state and federal sex crimes. Still ahead tonight here on The Debrief. The death of a child, is it accident or is it murder? The defense has the case and is already accusing the victim's sister of lying about being abused. We break down that testimony in just a moment. The defense has the case of a Georgia couple whose 2-year-old foster child died in their care. Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum face a mix of murder and other charges over the death of Layla Marie Daniel. Authorities say the little girl died from blunt force trauma to the abdomen, a cut pancreas, and other abuse. The defendants say the girl died accidentally by choking on a piece of chicken and that she was further injured during CPR. The first defense witness was a friend who stuck up for the defendants.
How did the girls seem around Jennifer? How did they react to Jennifer?
They were friendly. I mean, they're just normal girls. I mean, I was raised with 3 sisters, so it just seemed natural.
And how did they react around Joseph?
The same.
And how did Jennifer treat the girls?
Well, like they were her own. As I stated previously, she not only fed them, she clothed them, she provided living arrangements for them to include sports activities. I mean, me growing up as a child, I didn't have that kind of opportunity. I kind of wish I had that kind of opportunity, but.
Did you ever see Jennifer discipline the children for sleeping in the car?
No.
Did you ever see Jennifer discipline the children by spanking them?
No.
Did you ever see her use a belt on them?
No.
On cross, this friend admitted he wasn't always there, of course, and didn't know what went on behind closed doors, of course. And then there was this line of cross-examination about the defendant's political connections.
Ms. Mull asked you about Jennifer's relationship with the DA and with the police in Henry County.
Yes.
Right. And to your knowledge, there wasn't any political vendetta against her, was there?
Based on her occurrence to the BOC meetings, at least the way it was explained to me, because I wasn't there, but we would discuss about progress and how things are being approached. There did seem to be some type of discomfort and tension between what was going on with their campaign and as well as representing the BOC and so on.
And that information came from Jennifer, correct?
Right.
Because you didn't go to the meetings.
That is correct.
You didn't observe any tension or strain or anything of that nature?
Physically, no. In person, no, if that's what you're referring to.
Exactly. You didn't observe it. You were told it by the defendant.
Yes, that is correct.
But despite this tension, she got an internship at the DA's office without going through the entire application process. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Okay.
I will also add that was, at least to my knowledge, she was at the internship before it became discomforting.
Next came this emotional testimony from the mother of defendant Joseph Rosenbaum.
Can you tell us what the first meeting was like with Layla and Millie and you?
Sorry.
When was the first time you met the girls?
Jen and Joseph brought the girls over to my house.
Tell me, how did the girls fit into your family?
Very well. Fell in love with them right away.
How many grandchildren do you have, and what are their ages?
I have 2, my daughter's children. And right now they're 12 and 14.
And did they spend any time with Millie and Layla?
Yes.
Did you attend Layla's birthday party?
Yes, I did.
That would be on July 25th, correct?
Yes, I have pictures that say July 25th.
Next, the defendant's mother said she saw the victim and her sister about once a week and never noticed anything that would have raised her suspicions that abuse was possibly occurring.
Did you have an opportunity to have the girls stay with you overnight?
Yes,
Who bathed them?
I did.
Who tucked them in at night?
My husband and myself.
So you had opportunities to see them unclothed, correct?
Yes.
And did you see any bruises, marks, or cuts or abrasions?
No.
Did you ever see Jennifer or Joseph hit, spank, stomp, or in any way hurt Millie or Layla?
I never did.
Did you ever
She
see?
used timeout.
She used timeout.
She used timeout or not letting them play with their toy.
Did you ever see on them the results of being stomped, hit, spanked with a belt, or hurt in any way?
No, never.
Did you ever see any bruises, marks, cuts?
I never
abrasions?
saw anything that didn't look normal for a toddler.
Did Millie or Layla ever tell you they were afraid of Jennifer or Joseph?
No,
Did they ever tell you that they were being hurt, hit, spanked, stomped, kicked?
no. They love Jen and Joseph. And Jen and Joseph are good parents. If I would have saw anything on those kids, I would have turned Jen and Joseph both in myself.
But that was before the alleged abuse was said to have happened. The state forced defendant Joseph Rosenbaum's mother to examine injuries found by the medical examiner. She said the official findings surprised her. Finally, she described how her relationship with her son should have led her to know if something was wrong.
When you weren't there, would you agree with me that you don't necessarily know what goes on in the home when you aren't physically there?
I agree.
And if there was physical abuse in the house, would you agree with me that that might be something that Joseph didn't mention to you?
No.
You think he would talk to you about abusing
Joseph
the children?
is not the type of person.
Okay.
I don't believe Jen is either. So you could tell me all day long. I'll never believe it.
Okay. My question, though, is that would you agree with me that that's something that, if it was happening in the home, he probably wouldn't mention to you?
I wouldn't think you would.
He would not mention that to you?
No.
Okay.
Unless Jen was doing it.
Unless Jen was doing
And he wasn't, yeah.
All right.
He would. He comes to me for advice quite a bit, actually.
The victim's sister, Millie, testified about being abused, though, and many people, myself included, are inclined to trust the words of children like her. But the defense called this next social services worker to testify that the child had been coached into lying.
You also made notations that Peggy was teaching Millie to react negatively to people, correct?
Yes, those were my observations at the time.
And Peggy told Millie that her aunt, Elaine Place, was part of the reason her sister was killed. Isn't that what she said?
Yes, that was brought to me by, in visits, multiple visits that I had with the child, Millie.
It's fair to say that Peggy was talking about the death of Layla, her sister.
Correct.
And she was talking about the death to Millie.
Yes.
And she was telling her things that were inappropriate for a child to hear.
Yes.
And you made a note that you wanted to talk to Peggy about brainwashing the child against other individuals.
Yes.
And you also made a note that lying for Millie was an issue.
Yes.
This defense witness went on to describe more troubling interactions with the victim's sister and an aunt.
She reported to you that Millie told whoppers.
Correct.
And what does whoppers mean to you?
Whoppers meant to her telling lies.
Ms. Banks, in addition to saying Millie should be adopted by white people, said that she cannot be adopted by same-sex couple, correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Banks basically told you she wanted to homeschool Millie.
She did mention that.
And then Millie told you she wanted homeschooling, correct?
Correct.
It's fair to say that you were concerned about the influence that Ms. Banks was having on Millie.
Yes, initially.
How did you characterize what Peggy was doing to Millie?
It was traumatizing to the child, as there were a lot of concerns about age-appropriate conversations with the child, as well as the child had been through a lot of trauma already that was observed by myself, as well as concluded by therapists that I put in place for her. So within that, I was trying to make the situation that she was going through, being in foster care and leaving in foster care, as less traumatic as possible.
Let's go back to the panel one last time on this case. It seems to me, Joseph Tully, that a lot of people apparently were buzzing into the ear of this surviving sister, Millie, who apparently, if we're to believe the prosecution, was also enduring abuse. Is it possible that Millie is a liar? Can the jury believe that? She got up on the stand. She told investigators that she herself was abused.
I think the biggest point here is that there's corroboration. There's bruises. There were certain types of bruising that were related to the specific type of abuse that she described, namely like loop bruises relating to belts and things like that. So the defense did a good job in bringing in another witness rather than attack the child when she was on the stand. And I thought it was an effective witness, but will it be enough to overcome what the prosecution has established? I don't think so.
I agree that it's unlikely, but look, the defense did the defense's job. Judge Ashley Wilcott, different question. Political connections, the defendant, the DA's office, internships. What's going on behind the scenes here?
Well, behind the scenes, the fact of the matter is that's, in my opinion, why the children were placed with Jennifer Rosenbaum in the first place, because the typical checks by DFACS didn't occur because she had all of these people vouching for her, so to speak. It was a system fail. But all those things meant people assumed she was a proper caretaker and the children were placed there without the safeguards of DFACS doing a full home evaluation.
And what is her full background then, Judge Wilcott? Why the connections? Where did these come from?
She built them. She is one of the most aggressive in terms of what her standing is. She went to Emory Law School. She was the one that built these relationships and didn't stop until she got the position she wanted, from what I understand. Interesting.
Linda Kenny Bodden, very quickly here. I'm listening to a lot in this case about Jennifer. What about Joseph? How is the state connecting him to this?
Well, that's your defense closing. Where was Joseph mentioned? He left for work before the child was damaged on the 17th, and there's 2 other places supposedly he was around. That doesn't mean he killed the children or abused them.
Wow, I expect that to be copied from
That's
Linda
right.
Kenny Bodden in the closing arguments here in this case when that point rolls around. Thanks a lot to the panel. Appreciate the discussion. Great discussions here tonight, but that's all the time we have here on The Debrief. A reminder that our live coverage of both of these cases resumes at 9 a.m. The Debrief back for you at 5. Have a good night, folks.